Um, Hi, my name is Hannah, and I'm 12. Okay, so I grew up as a preacher's kid. I've learned what it means to trust and believe in Jesus. But not everyone was raised in a Christian home or know who Jesus is, much less have faith in him. The Bible tells us about many people who know very little about Jesus, but put their faith and their trust in him. There was a man named Jairus. Jairus knew very little about Jesus, but he knew that he could heal people. So when Jesus was in town, Jairus had a daughter who was sick to the point of death. He says to Jesus, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be well and live." So Jesus goes to his house, and Jairus is full of emotion and excitement because Jesus is going to heal his daughter. But as they began to go to his house, Jesus immediately stops. He turns around and says, "Who touched me?" See, there was a woman nearby who had an issue with blood. She had a blood disease for over 12 years. She paid many physicians all her money, but none could heal her. But she was so desperate, she was willing to risk everything. She made her way through the crowd and touched the hem of Jesus' garment, and immediately she was healed. Jesus says, "Who touched me?" Imagine, Jairus must be thinking, "Who cares who touched you? My daughter is dying and you say who touched you?" But she knew if she could just make her way through the crowd and touch the hem of his garment, she would be healed. But there was one problem. There was one major problem. Because of her issue with blood, the law of that time forbid her to be near people. If she were to go into that crowd, if she were caught, she could have been stoned to death. His disciples said, "You see the crowd pressing around you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" When Jesus shouted out, "Who touched me?" the woman knew she had broken the law and that she could be stoned to death. But she was filled with relief that after 12 long years, she had finally been healed. And she knelt before Jesus and confessed everything. Jesus looked at her and said, "Daughter." She has been an outcast, disowned by her family and her friends. She may not have even been called daughter by her own dad in a long time. This was a word of acceptance, being part of a family. She was a daughter. Jesus looked at her and said, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." This woman, who had been an outcast to society for over 12 years, not only needed physical, but she needed emotional healing. For the first time in 12 years, she had been called a daughter. She was no longer an outcast, but Jesus accepted her as a daughter. No matter what society, friends, relatives, or anyone has labeled you, if you put your faith in Jesus Christ, he sees you as a son or a daughter of the Most High God. If you put your faith and trust in him, to him, your family. This woman, who had been looking to be healed for many years, no one she turned to could heal her. She had spent everything she had only to lose it all. She had tried absolutely everything. But it was not until she put her faith in the power of Jesus that she was completely healed. Some of you have been struggling with life's disappointments. You have been trying to find healing, comfort, acceptance, love, joy, peace, but everything has failed. Let me ask you, how much are you going to lose before you realize that Christ is the only answer? Jairus patiently, or maybe impatiently, waited for Jesus to heal his own daughter. But he could not deny the fact that Jesus could heal his daughter because he just witnessed it himself. In all the commotion, as they began to make their way to his house, Jesus overheard friends of Jairus telling him not to bother Jesus any longer and that it was too late. His daughter was dead. Jesus looks at Jairus and says, "Do not be afraid any longer, only believe." This is a theme that is found constantly throughout the Bible. When Moses led the people to the Red Sea and there was no place to go, the Red Sea was in front of them and the Egyptians who were going to kill them were behind them. This theme of do not be afraid, only believe was also illustrated when Daniel was thrown into the lion's den with the hungry lions. When the Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were thrown into the fiery furnace. When David faced Goliath. All of this comes down to one verse. When Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 5:7, "For we walk by faith and not by sight." When Jairus heard that his daughter was dead, Jesus says, "Do not fear any longer, only believe." Jesus took Peter, James, and John to the house of Jairus. People were weeping and wailing very loudly. And Jesus says, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? This daughter is not dead, but is asleep." They all began to laugh at him. People who don't understand the power of God may laugh at your faith, but remember, they also laughed at Jesus. He put all the people out of the house and took along the child's father, mother, Peter, James, and John, and entered the room where the child was lying. Taking the child by the hand, the same God that parted the sea for the Israelites, the same God that closed the mouth of the hungry lions for Daniel, the same God that protected the Hebrew boys from the fiery furnace, the same God that defeated Goliath through David. That same God said to this little girl, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk at the age of 12. If you'll personally believe in Jesus Christ and have faith in him, no matter what your life has been like, he wants to make you whole, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. As he said to Jairus, not to fear any longer, but only to believe. No matter what seems out of your control, even if it seems like the end has come, put your faith in Jesus, because nothing is impossible with God.